Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. Pound, and we are going to start studying a new unit on the human body. And the first chapter in that unit is Chapter 20, Human Anatomy and Physiology from BJU Biology's 4th edition. The first section we're going to talk about, Section 20A, is what is a human? So our objectives for this video are to describe the basic levels of human behavior, summarize the difference between anatomy and physiology, demonstrate proper use of anatomical terms of direction, and list and describe the 4 basic human tissues. So let's first talk about humans being made in the image of God. Because of this, we have 4 levels of human behavior. The first level is inborn behavior. This is reflex action, instinct, and it's probably the least influential. Now, for animals, this is very predominant in some of them, but for humans, much less so. There's also conditioned behavior, learned behaviors. Something like riding a bicycle. Many of the things that we do have to be learned. For some of you right now, you're learning how to drive a car. We are learning in class right now. So there are many learned behaviors. And also, this is not so special to humans. Other animals can do this, but there's other things that we can do that they cannot. For instance, we have much more intelligence. We have the ability to reason, solve problems, have insight, see relationships, cause and effect, attach value, especially to money, and react emotionally. Now, some animals also have intelligence, but not to the level that we do. Now, something that is very different between us and animals is spiritual behavior. And that is because we are made in God's image. And so we have morality. We can determine right and wrong. And obviously, we know that God does not have a physical body. So when we say we're made in God's image, we're not saying we physically look like God, but we have many of the other attributes of God. Okay, not perfectly like Him, but we're able to be kind, we're able to love, and we're able to do many of those other things that animals cannot do that we see God doing. But as I said, not perfectly like God. So let's take a look at more the anatomy side. We're going to take a look at human tissues, organs, and systems. So the first is the levels of organization, which should sound familiar. The first level organization is organ systems, and organ systems contain organs. And we can see actually a number of organ systems here. We can see parts of the digestive system, we can see the respiratory system, we can see the excretory system, the circulatory system, many different systems represented in this picture in the background. Now, organs are composed of tissues, and so one organ is the heart that is in the circulatory system. Tissues are composed of cells. So these are some muscle cells, and they make up tissues, and the tissues are in the organs. Now, when we talk about anatomy, we are talking about the study of the shape and structure of an organism and its parts. And this is different than physiology. Physiology is the study of the function of a living organism and its parts. So anatomy is just studying the parts themselves, what they look like. Physiology is what do they do and how do they work. When we study anatomy, we'll be talking about anatomical position. This position, when we're looking at The human body, when we are dissecting the fetal pig, is standing erect, arms at sides, with toes, palms, and face forward. So let's talk about some relative directions that are important in anatomical position that you need to know. First is ventral. When we talk about ventral, we're talking about the stomach side. So the stomach is ventral. Dorsal is the backside. Think of a dorsal fin on a fish or a dolphin. And when we talk about dorsal fin, we're talking about the fin on the back. Superior is toward the head. So think higher, superior. Something that is superior is higher. Inferior is toward the feet, and we see an F in there for feet, and also something that's inferior is lower. Medial is toward the midline, and we have the M's for medial and midline. Think medial, middle. Now, we're also going to be taking a look at some human body cavities. So, when we talk about different parts of the body, these are the cavities we're talking about. The first is the cranial cavity. That is the brain, the cranium. Sometimes you hear that word used for the brain. The spinal cavity contains the spinal cord, so just the spinal cord down the middle there in the picture. The thoracic cavity contains the heart, respiratory organs, and esophagus. So the organs and parts that are colored in this diagram are part of the thoracic cavity. It's everything above the diagram and the diaphragm, excuse me. And the diaphragm is labeled as number 3 in the diagram. It is that dotted line that you see. It's everything above that diaphragm. Then there is the abdominal cavity. This is where the digestive, reproductive, and excretory organs are contained. And this is everything below the diaphragm. Now, another word that we need to know is histology. This is the microscopic study of tissues. So, if we look at tissues under a microscope, we are studying histology. So, some types of tissues that we might study in histology are connective tissues. They support, connect, and protect other structures in the body. Some of these tissues are bone, blood, lymph, tendons, ligaments, fat, and cartilage. Notice there are 2 tissues in this list that are not solid. They are liquids. Blood and lymph are liquids. So a tissue does not have to be a solid. Epithelial tissue are layers of cells that cover or line external and internal surfaces. So an example is our skin, as you can see in the picture in the background. There are also muscle cells. These are composed of cells that contract, and they can be skeletal, smooth, or cardiac. We'll talk about all of those types of muscle cells in another section. And then there's nervous tissue. This contains cells that receive and transmit electrochemical impulses, and they have a really interesting shape. If you look at that cell in the background there, they are very interesting and just they allow us to do so many things. We wouldn't be talking. I wouldn't be talking to you. You couldn't listen to this. You couldn't move or anything without these nerve cells. So, our objectives for today were to describe the basic levels of human behavior, summarize the difference between anatomy and physiology, demonstrate proper use of anatomical terms of direction, and list and describe the 4 basic human tissues. So, in your notes, don't forget your 5 questions that you have to write for this video in the margin, and keep watching this video to answer the questions at the end.